What's up, YouTube? I got a little Zoo League recap for you here. So I wasn't gonna post this one, but once you get to match 4 and 5, you'll see why I decided to, because I feel like this is a good representation of life as like a small time content creator, and just like the randomness that goes on when you're trying to get like these videos together and stuff like that. So for me personally, like I don't play a ton of leagues in a day. If I'm streaming, I'm probably playing 2. If I'm not streaming, maybe I play 1, but a lot of the times I don't. So there's not like that deep of a pool to pull from when it comes to getting leagues together for YouTube or to get uploaded. And so you really have to like work with what you got. If you got time to run a league and the league has some interesting gameplay, I want to get it out there. But a lot of times you have leagues that don't have anything interesting happen. Like if you play a league and you just play against Scam 4 times and you go 2-2, and then the last match is against like Murktide, and it's just like an average match. It's not that exciting. Like it doesn't teach people something. You don't learn something from it. It just kind of happens. So whenever you have leagues that like have interesting stuff, interesting decisions, cool play lines, then you really want to get those up. And that's kind of what this is. I decided to run through this league with Domain Zoo. If you've been on the stream, link down below, then you'll know Zoo's a deck that I'm really, really fond of. Enjoying getting more reps in with it. But it's a deck that's got a lot of cool play patterns to it and a lot of cool lines, and that really interests me. So whenever I do have like some cool lines in Zoo, I want to get the video up. But like I foreshadowed already, once we get to match 4 and 5, you'll see this funny little situation that I had no control over that shows up. And yeah, so if you end up wanting to skip to those, go for it. But if you want to catch the rest of the video, here it is. Domain Zoo, like I said, a lot of the 4-ofs pretty stock at this point. Stub, Bolt, Ragavan, Wild Nicottle to an extent, Tribal Flames, Kavu, Binding, Scion of Draco. Got some flex spots with Orcish Bowmaster, 3 Neshoba Brawler, Dramoka's Command. In the sideboard, I pulled most of this sideboard from a list I saw in Goldfish, like the Stone of Eric, the Rest in Peace. I have been really liking the 2 Celestial Purges with all the scam running around. Chained to the Rocks, which there's a second copy down by Giganta. For whatever reason, it got shuffled apart from each other. 2 Spell Pierce, 2 Terra Sunder, a Veil of Summer, Natural State. A Hidetsugu Consumes All. A Wear and Tear to go along with our Giganta. So let's just go ahead and start off the matches, get into the thick of it, and then obviously when we get to the funny part, I'll pause and explain what's going on. I literally have no idea how to explain it, but you'll see. So game 1 on the play. 3 lands, turn 1 Ragavan, potential turn 2 Nicottle. We could play fetch up a tap Triumph and play a turn 2 Scion, but in the blind, game 1, turn 1 Ragavan. It's kind of hard to pass on that. Opponent's got a Bolt for the Ragavan. I would normally think Murktide, but Arid Mesa being a non-blue fetch makes me think it's probably more of like a Fair Breach deck, maybe a Grinding Station deck, but something like that. I don't think it's Murktide. So I'm just going to throw a bunch of pressure at them. Sideboarding for this deck. It's funny because it does change up a lot, whether it's like a Fair Breach or an Unfair Breach. So I ended up boarding out some Neshoba Brawlers, expecting it to be Fair Breach, which is going to be a lot higher on like Bolt and Unholy Heat, Prismatic Ending. And then my opponent starts off on Jetmere Garden, Wrenn and 6, and I realized, oh, it's not a breach deck at all. It's creativity. Well, I am incorrectly boarded for creativity this game. Like, I took out Neshoba Brawlers. I really need those. I might have boarded in Rest in Peace. Actually, I'm pretty positive I boarded in Rest in Peace. That's not good against creativity. So you'll absolutely see some adjustments if we end up losing this game. Not that we're planning on losing this game, but, you know. So get Scion down. Thankfully, find our third land. Get Scion down. Hold up Stub. Unfortunately, if our opponent does have like a creativity and a spell pierce, we can't do much about it. I'll creativity spell pierce. So we'll scoop it up to that. I know I'm not looking at what they're getting off the creativity. Technically, that's wrong, but anything they get is going to be beating me there. So now, correct sideboarding. Trimmed on some Bowmasters, cut a Ragavan, brought those Neshoba Brawlers back in, brought in my Spell Pierces. Opponent's got the turn 1 Prismatic Ending. That's fine because we've got Neshoba Brawler. Oh. And we could play the Taps of Eye Triumph to get an extra point off our Brawler. Rather just go with the double Nicodle here, keep the pressure up. If we get enough damage on our opponent, then even if they do have like a turn 4 creativity, which we can stop with the binding, but even if they were able to creativity, then we could potentially just sack something, ditch a card, and attack around like an Archon. But like I said, with this Leyline binding, we're able to stop it anyway. Fetch and Shock the Overgrown Tomb instead of playing the Taps of Eye Triumph so that I can hold up cycling the Triumph if I need to. And we're on to match number 2. Everybody's favorite play in Modern, turn 1, Scam of Grief. Take our Bolt, take our Bowmaster, yep. I could play out a turn 1 Wild Nicodle off a Breeding Pool, but that Nicodle just dying to a Bowmaster straight up doesn't sound very appealing to me. So we'll wait a turn, get down the Scion. I could go for the Tribal Flames on the Grief, but if my opponent has an Undying effect, then I really don't accomplish anything. And then when they follow up with a Thoughtseize and take my Kavu instead of the Tribal Flames, then, hey, I know they have an Undying effect. So at least here, getting out the Nicodle first means that I can get 2 creatures on board to double block the Grief. Now, if they have a removal spell like that, not much I can do about it. Like, they had the curve out. Especially if they had the Undying effect in hand from the beginning. Really nothing you could do about that. But I did like that line of playing out to the board earlier. Trying to make them have the removal spell and the Undying effect. So, sideboarding against Scam, as you can see, Veil of Summer coming in. Looks pretty good against a turn 1 Grief, especially if your opponent decides to not Undying it. Which I don't know if that was intentional. I don't know if that was like, oh, they veiled. Got to throw this away now. But regardless, it's not on the battlefield, so that's a plus. Caudal cracking in, get down Kavu. That way, if my opponent has like a Bowmaster or something, I can play this Scion pre-combat, give my Kavu first strike and trample, my Wild Nicodle trample. They waited until after I discarded to Bowmaster. Obviously, if they had played it before I discarded, or before I, discarded and drew, then I could have bolted it, assuming they didn't have an Undying effect. But either way, we put too much power on board. Our opponent doesn't want to deal with it. We are on to game 3. League is flying by. So we got a Celestial Purge. We can get a Savai Triumph off this Wooded Foothills. Turn 2 Purge. Turn 2 4/3 Brawler. Or just get double griefed. Good grief. Opponent dashes in their Ragavan, fetch up the Savai Triumph just to make sure it doesn't get exiled to the Ragavan. They whiff by hitting our Kavu. Play out another Kavu. If they have a removal spell, again, it's kind of unfortunate for us, but if they don't have the removal spell, then I like playing out to the board here. Bowmaster to ping. They don't know about this Leyline binding, so I'm kind of relying on it to deal with the grief. Block the Ragavan, just take like a little love tap off the Bowmaster and the token. Get a bunch of these bodies off board. Territorial Kavu will be exiling for the foreseeable future because I don't want my opponent pinging me and growing an army token. Fury down my Scion. Attack in. So now we're down to bolt range, which is a little scary. Not the worst thing in the world, but it's scary. A lot of the scam decks are like low or off of bolt now, so that certainly helps a lot. One card left in their hand, which means if it is an Undying effect on the Bowmaster, which is what this block would suggest, then we get to Tear Asunder, kick on the Bowmaster, exile that, hit them for 9. 9 to an empty board, so they'd have to have like dash Ragavan into a burn spell off the top of our library or Bowmaster. Thankfully they do not, so we're on to round number 3. Good old QB Turtle. Last time I played them, it was Murktide. Looks like it's not the case this time because they did reveal Kahira as a companion. Turn 1 Rag. Turn 2 Prismatic Ending from them. Preordained. So some sort of just straight blue-white control deck. Unfortunately, I was really relying on that Ragavan, which we could have waited and dashed, but when they reveal Kahira and a blue land, like you assume counterspell, I'd rather play around the 1 mana removal spell than like the counterspell. So I feel like the odds are probably pretty similar. Second pending. Certainly a situation where you'd rather have Scion of Draco than like Ragavan or Wild Nicotl. But alas, if we don't have Scion of Draco in hand, kind of hard to play around that one, right? Let's throw out Gigantha, see what happens. Expecting like Subtlety. Instead, we get a Shark Typhoon for 2. Pretty good, but not as good. Teferi's good, unfortunately. So both of Teferi try to bait a counterspell. Unfortunately, they do save it for our Gigantha. And we really have like a whole lot of nothing going on after that Gigantha. And it's got Solitude mana available, so that's the immediate concern. Yep. Solitude does hurt a lot less against Zoo than it does against Shadow, so that part's kind of cool. Narset, Parter of Veils. I believe they revealed a second Narset, so not the most exciting draw. Counterspell for the Bowmaster, and we will scoop it up and go to game 2. Sideboarding against blue-white control. Boarded in Veil of Summer. Boarded in the Tear Asunders. So you can kick them against a Planeswalker, take out Chalice, take out Leyline Binding. Maybe they're running Engineered Explosives. Either way, this is kind of the hand I want to see against blue-white control, where it's just like dude into dude into dude. Now, I do have to be a little careful with this Flooded Strand, because if I go fetch up a black source, I have to get something tapped, like a tapped Savai Triome or tap Zagoth Triome. But I really want to hold up the double counter spells. So you'll see me just like passing here, waiting to see what happens before I commit to a fetch. But now that they've wrathed, I get to fetch up a tap Zagoth Triome, get my Kavu down, have all 5 colors, and still be able to hold up blue for some sort of interaction. Got a march and a counter spell. We got Pearson Stubb, so now we're just like looting away with Kavu, trying to find a bolt, trying to find a Tribal Flames, play out the Nicodle, because if they do have another Supreme Verdict here, I can dash Ragavan and try to get something rolling. But we just find a Tribal Flames, fire it off because they're not holding up double blue. So if they had like Spell Pierce, I could pay for it. If they had Flusterstorm, that'd be kind of a weird bring in, but seen weirder. Game 3. I really kept this hand on the back of like turn 2 Bowmaster, or turn 1 Pierce, turn 2 Bowmaster, and if I find a 3rd land, turn 3 Kavu. Did end up finding a 2nd land, so I could have Kavu'd on turn 2, but I'm not going to into like obvious counterspell mana. They're going to fight over our Bowmaster. Could have just dashed Ragavan here, but probably right to play the Kavu. It's close. I'm not like super convinced of many of the lines in here. I don't feel like I have a any sort of haymaker against blue-white control. So it's a lot of trying to nickel and dime advantage. This I thought was interesting. They played out Iganjo, which, if you know, you can channel Iganjo to deal like 4 damage to an attacking or blocking creature. And they had the white mana, so they could have Iganjo'd the Ragavan if I dashed it. But instead they played it out. So I decided to go for the Tribal Flames instead of the Ragavan, thinking Solitude was coming down because they needed the double white. And then they Shark Typhooned instead. So I got a little got by that one. It could still have Solitude, but I just thought it was strange to like go for the Iganjo when there's a good chance you needed the white mana for Solitude. Dashed Ragavan there. Could have just played the Giganta, but the Giganta is just chump blocking. The Ragavan maybe has a chance of hitting something relevant. What? I don't know, but something's better than nothing. Either way, lose that one. Fall to 2-1. On to round number 4. Let's talk about the opener. Was this an easy mold decision? Yeah. So 1-landers are almost like impossible to keep in Zoo. Just not being able to play Kavu, Scion, Brawler, Tribal Flames. You really need to get all those land types. So 1-landers are almost instant throwbacks. It's like another scam opponent. I could have gotten a Zagoth Triome there to Leyline Binding. I ended up getting a little greedy and going for the Kavu, which, as we saw last time, I got a little bit punished for taking the creature heavy line into just removal spells. I still don't think it's a bad line. Like, I think getting onto the board is really important in these kind of matchups. But at the same time, like, I could understand the fact that if my opponent didn't have a follow-up, which they clearly didn't, and we had Leyline binding the Fury, they would just be sitting here doing nothing, and I could get out Kavu and Brawler and whatever. But it's like a gamble. You just don't know that they have nothing going on. But you can probably make some assumptions like, hey, my opponent scammed a Fury on turn 1 instead of a Grief. There's a better chance they don't have a backup if they're just all in on this play. Like, they don't have the double Thoughtseize backup. But either way, we did get to just run out dudes, chump block after chump block. Eventually, they ran out of things to do. And we were able to chump the Fury enough times to get in lethal with our Kavu, and Bolt, and Brawler. Alright. This is going to be funny. First of all, Chain to the Rocks, fantastic in the scam matchup. Not the funny part. Not the funny part. We'll have funny here in just a moment. So we find a Bowmaster. We pass the turn. And this is where Magic Online just forgets what it's doing. I don't know why, but in the replay, everything just like goes wrong here. And I will explain that. So this says they dashed a Ragavan. They paid 2 mana, dashed a Ragavan. My opponent did not pay 2 mana and dash the Ragavan in the actual game. They paid 1 off Mount Doom and hard cast the Ragavan. Which makes sense, right? Because they know I have the Lightning Bolt. So there's not really a reason to like go... Yeah, they knew I had the Lightning Bolt. So there's not a reason to just like go all in, dash the Ragavan. And my expectation was they had an Undying effect. So they just played the Ragavan, passed. They didn't dash it. So I have no idea where Magic Online is getting this dash thing from. But it goes to my turn and then just like freaks out. So here it'll show you over on the left side, like I'm paying mana. It's because my opponent has a Ragavan on the field with 1 swamp open, and I'm going to Orcish Bowmaster to ping down that Ragavan while they can't Bowmaster my Bowmaster on my turn. And I'm just pinging the Ragavan, playing a land, and passing. And my opponent ends up like whiffing. They didn't have an Undying effect. And it's like the turn after, I think they play something that didn't really matter. And we just kind of run away with it. They scoop like 2 turns later. But I just thought this was the most insane thing. Like, I get this little orange or yellow triangle over on the bottom left, way down there. It's like, oh, there's an error. Something's going on. And it's literally like Magic Online misremembering the recap. And no explanation. But we go to... This is me like trying to replay it because I'm like, hey, that wasn't right. That's not what happened. Why is Magic Online showing me a play line that didn't occur? I guess they didn't know about the Bolt. They Fury. They didn't... Oh, yeah, they did Grief. Yeah, I know I was remembering that part correctly. They know about the Bolt. Bolt's there. They have knowledge of the Bolt. They missed their second land drop. And so when they hit it and they have Ragavan, there's like no reason for them to dash Ragavan because they're just trading down on mana. But they ended up hard casting the Ragavan, like I said, and I fetched up on like just a tap, try them to get all my lands online, untap, play Bowmaster. And yeah, we'll just skip ahead a little bit because it just goes through the whole don't know what's going on again. Either way, on to round number 5. Keep a hand with Ragavan and Scion. Opponent leads on a Gemstone Cavern, exiling Shadow Spear. So I was trying to figure out for a second, like, what the hell kind of Rhinos or Living In deck is playing Shadow Spear. Then I realized, oh, it's Hardened Scales. It's not Rhinos. And Ragavan hits my opponent's Haywire Might right after they Cauldron. So A plus Ragavan. Absolutely. After all the times that card has let me down, it's deserving that it finally does well for me. Gonna Haywire Might out the Hardened, or Haywire Might the Cauldron before the Hangerback resolves, because I don't want them exiling the Hangerback. Or not exiling the Hangerback, exiling the Haywire. So when you sack Haywire Might, puts a trigger on the stack. If I let my opponent resolve Hangerback there and then go to Haywire Might at any time, they can immediately exile the Haywire Might with its activated ability on the stack, targeting the Cauldron, and get an extra 2 counters on my Hangerback for the Hardened scales. So I have to make sure if I'm going to hit the Cauldron, I hit it before they have a creature on the battlefield that they can put a counter on. Ugh. You get the idea. Either way, they find a Ravager. I say, okay, cool, that's a Ravager. I'm going to attack anyway. Because I've got a Ragavan with first strike, which means if you do want to block, you have to start sacking stuff to the Ravager. And the taller you make that guy, the easier it is for me to deal with what's going on, because that's less bodies altogether. I decide to take this hit because even if they started sacking stuff, it's only 8 damage from the Ravager. And 8 is less than 14, so kind of okay there. Play out another Scion, pass through. Opponent's only got 2 cards in hand. So again, taking this attack, because even if they activate Ink Moth and they go for like the damage off Hardened scales, it's only 8. If they do have something like a 1 green X pump spell, like I think there's one that's a green X gives hexproof or something, then yeah, that kills me. But I'm not in a great spot against the Ravager anyway. But attacking with Ragavan, hold back a blocker. I only need to hold back a Scion because I represent being able to block both the Ink Moth, or either the Ink Moth or the Ravager. If they go all in on the Ink Moth pre-combat, I can block it. If they attack with both, then I can block the Ravager, and if they sack everything to try to present lethal with the Ink Moth, then I can bolt that in response to the modular trigger targeting the Ink Moth. So either way, I'm safe from that. And now I have the stub for like a pump spell, protection spell, something. Either way, game number 2, board in. Bunch of cool artifact hate. Got Tear Sunders, Wear Tear, Natural State. Board in the, what's it called? Exile Under a Mountain thing. Chain to the Rocks, that one. Board out some Ragavans, board out some Bowmasters. And, okay. Important turn. I could have played out a threat. Like, I've got Kavu, Brawler, Scion that I can all play out. But if my opponent has an Arcbound Ravager here, I am very, very much in trouble. Because now they've got, like, Ravager plus 4 Hangerback tokens, potentially 6 if they've got another land and can activate the Hangerback Walker. So that puts me in a really, really rough spot. But if I just sit on Tear Asunder, then if they have a Ravager, I can respond with Tear Asunder the Hangerback Walker. Since Tear Asunder exiles instead of destroying, they don't get any of those extra Thopters. And then I get to untap and potentially double spell anyway. Which probably should have, but I was kind of hoping to like bluff my opponent out of doing anything relevant. So, really don't know what happened there. My opponent played out a Hardened Scales and then went to play a Hangerback. And I think they were like trying to play the Hangerback on 1 and didn't realize they couldn't do that since it's like XX, so you have to pay X twice to get X counters. So obviously, Hangerback dies as a state-based action. It does not get a counter, does not pass go, does not collect $200. And Moto just kind of like freaked out at this as well. The replay was just like, oh, nope, can't handle this. We're over it. We're not dealing with you anymore. But the long story short of this game is I started attacking with Neshoba Brawlers and played 2 threats next turn, and my opponent just couldn't keep up. Not much else to say with that. I think they ended up finding a patchwork automaton kind of late and going in on it with Ravager, but at that point I'd found a leyline binding and could pay for ward, so that didn't end up doing very much. But yeah, I have no idea why Magic Online was freaking out so much in all of those replays there at the end. But again, like I mentioned at the start of the video, this is kind of the joys of being a small content creator. It's me doing everything here. It's me recording the replays, me doing the voiceovers, me running the leagues. So when things don't line up perfectly, you kind of just have to roll with it. So it's either throw this out there, try to explain the situation, let y'all know what's happening, or not post. And I would rather give you something that's not perfect, but is fun and unique and different than give you no league whatsoever. So hope you enjoyed it. As far as changes to Zoo that I would make, some of the things I made for the second league that I'll be probably posting sometime in the next couple days is I did swap the Rest in Peace and the Stone of Eric in the sideboard for a second Veil of Summer and a Teferi Time Reveler. Teferi's kind of fallen out of favor a little bit recently, but I think it's such a house against like any of the fair decks that I kind of want access to it. If you play Zoo and you have some other suggestions for beating up on like the mid-range decks, scam, control decks, then absolutely love to hear those. Otherwise, yeah, expect some more Zoo content going forward because, again, I really like the deck. I think it plays fairly well at the moment. I'll be trying out some of the other Zoo variants as well. There's like Beanstalk variants out there, and not so big into the Cascade into Kavu or Tribal Flames variants, but we'll see. You never know. Things could jump up that kind of catch my eye. Either way, as always, link down below to the Twitter in case you want to know when the live stream's going live. The Twitch in case you actually want to catch that live stream. The Discord if you want to come talk about Shadow, Zoo, anything else, Modern, Historic, Legacy. And then link to the deck list as always in case you want to get some of these cards yourself. Hope everybody has a fantastic rest of your day. Stay safe. Enjoy some good food and company. I will catch y'all back live later. Adios for now.